I've been asked in the past how to do tree groups in AutoCAD. I now use Axiscape software which does it all automatically. But if you're drawing sort of from scratch in AutoCAD, I'm just going to cover a few ways that I used to do it. And if, for instance, we've got 3 trees here and you want them represented together as a single group because they're all identical or practically identical. I mean, to be honest, you'd probably survey these on their separately, but for the for this video, we say we're going to do these as a group. I would get your basic tree block or whatever you use. I'll just copy this. And set it up with its basic dimensions. Let's give it a nice big RPA so we can see things clearly. Call it G23. Go a bit bigger on south. And copy it onto the tree centers. So that's the simplest representation. There's a tree group. Now you may want to merge these canopies and RPAs so it's a single flowing line. To do circles, you can use polyline rather than sort of trimming all these bits away and joining them together. So I'd actually redraw the RPAs because they're circles. So polyline, close it, and then just mouse over the midsection, convert them into arcs. And you've got a flowing canopy line. I'm not going to put a different layer on to do that. And you would hide the other RPAs. Like such. So you've got a flowing RPA around the group. You would hide the topo canopies eventually. Now to do that on the canopies isn't quite as easy because they're northeast, southwest, they're not circles. So you'd have to sort of trim bits away and play around with them. So if I just switch on my RPAs again, so I'm going to have to explode these. And because they were blocks, we've now got splines for the canopies and the tags have gone because it was an attribute. So I can get rid of these. I'll just put 2 there to cover them all. Don't need these tag numbers, tree numbers, let's get rid of those. Off the topo. So I'll now delete these old RPAs. Now the problem, these are splines, so what I want to do is trim so that I remove these sections of the canopy here just to leave the outline, but I also want a bit of change the thickness, the width, etc. So I'd really rather these were polylines. So if I right click spline, convert to polyline, do the same again. If you already got polylines for canopies, then you don't have to do this. So now they're polylines, they're a bit chunkier, but that's fine. So now I can trim, select that one, remove that bit, select that one, remove that bit, and that bit, and remove that bit, and then join these together. It made a noise that it didn't want to do that. There you go. So now it's a single thing, and I'll give it a bit more of a width to show it. So now we've got a nice little tree group, and of course you could modify this further if you think that this stem RPA is slightly smaller. You can fiddle about, modify as need be. So let's look at another situation where, say, you've got a linear group of trees, like a hedge, line of leyland or beech or something, and they're not plotted on the topo. I'll switch on the tree canopies. So let's say there's a hedge here, and they've plotted sort of a canopy of the hedge. They've labelled it. Let's say it runs from here to up here. How do you represent that? Well, I would use a sort of centre line approach where I draw a centre line. Sometimes they'll actually put a centre line on the topo. You'll have maybe a green line going down the middle, labelled centre line sometimes, but I would say, okay, the hedge is centre between this canopy, starts around here, and I just draw myself a centre line with which to work with. I'm going to stick it here. I know it's sort of roughly this side of this fence. This is a fence line, and it pushes out here because that's all blackthorn overspill or whatever, so it carries on down here under this tree, and let's say it ends there. So that's the centre line of my hedge, and I want to draw an RPA around that, and the RPA is going to be, let's say, 2 meters or 1.8 meters. So I'll use offset, type in 1.8, and then offset this line, this side and this side. So I've got the 2 lines there, and I'm going to join those together, and you need to make sure you lock onto the end points of this because we're going to join them eventually. And then select those 3 and type in join. So this is now one polyline, and I'm going to close it. And I want the ends of the RPA to be sort of circular. You could do it by eye, or you could do it accurately. Just plot a circle on there, grab that segment of the polyline, mouse over, bring it up to there, grab my circle, stick them at the other end, and mouse over, convert to arc, get rid of the circle, and match properties. So that's my RPA. And this line, centre line, will become my sort of category line to show the centre line, and also to show the category of this hedgerow, because I don't want to colour the RPA or the canopy to represent the colour. So for instance, let's say this is going to be category C, so I want this to be grey, and I want to give it some width to make it stand out a bit. So, and I tend to do my lines in dashed, and I'll enable the generation and knock the scale up a bit more. So now that's my center line, and of course I would just give it a few tags. If I want to do a canopy as well, and you don't want to use a topo canopy, you want to keep everything using your canopies, because you're going to switch off the topo canopies eventually, then you do the same again, but there's no point redoing all we did. We can use this to offset the canopy. If we know that this is 1.8 and we want a canopy of say 2 meters, then I just need to go 0.2 meters from here to here, so offset 0.2 and then pull this out, because that's going to go in, that's going to go out, and then match that to that. So I've got a linear group, if you like, as a hedge, represented by this dashed line and the RPA and canopy, and eventually you would turn these off. So you're left with that. You'd also turn the tree stems off eventually, because we don't want the topo stuff on if we're putting our stuff on. Doing sort of closed tree groups is a lot easier, but using the same sort of method we've done there. Let's say there's in this corner there's a big group of blackthorn or something. They haven't plotted it on the topo, so I need to draw it from scratch. So you start with a baseline, and you either have to decide whether you're drawing the canopy extents or the stem extents. So if I say I'm going to do the canopy extents, and it sort of spreads around here up to this little service thingy, because I remember that when I was on site or whatever, and you come round and it ended up around here. Just reached over this fence, and then I close it. So I've got a closed polyline, and that's going to be my canopy. So I'll match that to my canopy to remind me. And I'm just going to represent my stems inside. They're all over the place. I don't exactly know where they are. There's hundreds of them. So I'm just going to offset in about that much, and that is the extent of my stems. It's vague, I know, but this is blackthorn, and since I've done this, I'm just going to borrow this and set that. So this will become my closed group, and the RPA will just be a meter past this canopy edge, because I've estimated it on site, and that's what I think it is. So I'm going to use offset, type in 1, and just bring this out by 1 meter, and that's my RPA. And again, I'm going to call that group, whatever it is, let's say 12. So that's 3 ways to represent the tree groups, and you can of course hatch these things if you like to do such things. I'm not a great fan of putting too much hatch onto drawings, because I think it gets a bit too messy in the end. But you would choose whatever hatch you want to use and colour it to the same as the category or the canopy, whatever you like, and then send it to the back. Some people will hatch the RPAs and the canopies, and I just think it gets too complicated, too messy. You know, the architects, they just want to see simple lines really. They don't want absolutely awash with hatching. But one useful part of the hatching is, say, for like woodland groups. If you've got a woodland group, say this is all woodland area and it's just coming into the site, and the canopies over this, let's say start here, and the canopy comes over this fence line. Maybe it really comes out here. And then I would just bring it back here and then close it, because this will disappear later on. Match that to my canopy line. So that's my canopy line. Now I know the tree stems are, let's say the closest ones are 3 or 4 meters from this fence line into the woodland. So if I just put in 3.5, so I'm offsetting, and I just offset a few bits of this fence just to give me something to work with. So my stems could be coming in sort of like this. Again, I'm just going to close that. And I'll just delete these lines I did. And I'll use my dash line. You don't want to keep doing things twice, so always match properties stuff. And this is going to be category B. I'm going to make these scales a scale a bit bigger because it's a longer span. And the RPA I'm going to say is 12 meters, because these are big trees, from this stem line. So I'll put in 12, bring that out to there. So that's my RPA line. And this is a woodland area, and we're only really interested in what's in this site. If this site's going to be developed, this field's going to have houses on it, we only care what's really within, you know, this sort of distance from it. But I want to hatch this to show it a bit more clearer, so I'm going to just put a hatch on here and change the hatch settings, or if you've already done one, borrow that. So match that onto there. I'm going to change its colour to match the category, send it to the back, and I'm just going to change the scale a bit. And then I'm just going to get rid of, I don't need to show anything past this sort of point. So then I'll trim all this away. Trim that, trim that, trim that, and trim the hatch. Get rid of that line and leave it open like that, because then you're saying this continues. And I would call that either a G or a W. W1 for Woodland 1. And that's how I would do sort of a woodland area or tree group coming into the edge of a site, but it actually isn't in the site, but you need to show its influence in the site, because that's quite important RPA there. So that's a few examples of ways to do it, and thanks for watching.